You have 6 months to marry and produce a legitimate heir, or controlling interest passes to the board. Gerald Pemberton's words hung in the air of Elias Thorne's corner office like a death sentence. The old lawyer had delivered the news with professional detachment, but Elias heard what he wasn't saying. Your grandfather engineered this trap from beyond the grave, and you walked right into it. Elias turned from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he'd spent 15 years conquering. At 38, he'd built Thorne Industries into an empire. His reflection showed a man who looked older than his years. Sharp jawline, dark hair touched with premature silver, steel-gray eyes that had earned him the nickname Ice King. The board's been approached, Marcus Webb said quietly from his position by the door. Head of legal, closest thing to a friend Elias possessed. Cordova Limited is offering premium prices for their shares if control shifts. Of course, Richard Cordova had been circling for years, waiting for weakness. There's another complication, Marcus hesitated. Victoria is giving interviews. Victoria Chen, his ex-fiancée, the woman who'd betrayed him 3 years ago in ways that still left scars. What kind of interviews? The sympathetic kind. Brilliant CEO too married to his work to notice his fiancée's loneliness. Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. She's positioning herself as the woman who got away, implying you're incapable of real human connection. She sold our expansion plans to Cordova while wearing my ring. Elias's voice could freeze water. I'm not the villain in that story. No, but public perception doesn't care about facts. The narrative is that the Ice King lives up to his name, brilliant in boardrooms, frozen in personal relationships. Marcus met his gaze. The will's marriage clause is becoming public knowledge. If you can't meet its requirements, Victoria's narrative becomes prophetic. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Thorne, Lady Catherine Ashford is here for your 3 o'clock. Elias had forgotten. His late mother's closest friend, society matriarch, fixture in his life since childhood. Her timing was suspiciously perfect. Send her in. Lady Catherine entered with the commanding presence of old money and older connections. Silver hair perfectly coiffed, designer suit impeccable. She'd been at every major family event. If anyone understood the Thorne family dynamics, it was Catherine. Elias, darling, you look dreadful. She kissed his cheek with practiced affection. Still keeping our boy out of trouble, Mr. Webb? Attempting to, Lady Ashford. Charming as always, Catherine. Elias gestured to the living area. To what do I owe the pleasure? She settled into the leather chair, studying him with eyes that missed nothing. I won't insult you with pleasantries. Gerald called me. This inheritance clause is medieval, but it's also ironclad. She paused. You need a wife, quickly, quietly, and most importantly, someone who understands this is a business arrangement. I'm not interested in another betrayal like Victoria. Catherine's tone softened with genuine sympathy. 3 years hasn't erased what she did, which is precisely why I'm here. What you need isn't romance, it's a solution. Despite himself, Elias listened. I have someone in mind. Lila Winters, 29 years old, educated at Yale with degrees in art history and conservation, currently working as a private art conservator, respected in her field. She paused. More relevantly, she's drowning in debt from her father's medical bills, terminal cancer, experimental treatments not covered by insurance. I'm proposing I buy a wife. I'm proposing you save 2 lives simultaneously, Catherine corrected. Hers from financial ruin and the loss of her father, yours from corporate wolves circling for the kill. She gets her father's care and financial security. You get your company and fulfillment of the will's requirements. And what does Miss Winters get beyond money? Elias asked.
still watching the city. The privilege of being married to a man who views her as a business transaction. She gets honesty, Catherine replied firmly. No false promises of love, no pretense of romance that could lead to heartbreak. Just clear terms, mutual benefit, and respect. Marcus cleared his throat. Lady Ashford, with respect, this seems remarkably convenient. How exactly did you come to know Miss Winters and her specific financial situation? Catherine's smile was enigmatic. I have my sources, Mr. Webb, and I've known the Winters family distantly for years. When I learned of Robert Winters' illness and Lila's struggles, and considering Elias's situation, the solution seemed obvious. The words hung heavy with possibility and compromise. Somewhere in this city, a woman named Lila Winters had no idea her life was about to intersect with his in the most calculated way possible. What do you know about her character, beyond her credentials and her debt? Catherine's expression softened slightly. She's devoted to her father, working herself to exhaustion to cover his care. She's brilliant in her field. She's also intensely private, which would serve you well. No social media presence, no public drama, no ambitions for spotlight or status. She sounds too good to be true, Marcus interjected. She's desperate, Mr. Webb. That's what you're not seeing. Catherine's voice held a sharp edge. Desperation makes people agreeable to arrangements they might otherwise reject, rather like Elias's own situation, wouldn't you say? The parallel wasn't lost on any of them. Elias facing the loss of his company, Lila Winters facing the loss of her father, both backed into corners by circumstances beyond their control. Arrange a meeting, Elias said finally, his voice hollow with resignation. Let's see if desperation truly does make strange bedfellows. Catherine stood, smoothing her skirt with satisfaction. I'll set it up for tomorrow evening. Neutral location, private room at the Sterling Club. Come with an open mind, Elias. After she left, Marcus moved to stand beside Elias at the window. This feels wrong. I can't put my finger on why. Catherine's involvement, the perfect timing, this mysterious Lila Winters appearing exactly when you need her. I know, Elias cut him off, but what choice do I have? 6 months isn't enough time for a traditional courtship, even if I were inclined towards one. And after Victoria, he shook his head. At least with a contract, everything is clear. No expectations, no disappointments, no lies. No love, Marcus added softly. Especially no love. Elias's reflection in the rain-streaked glass looked like a man already resigned to his fate. Love is what cost me Victoria's betrayal. Love is what my grandfather used to control me from beyond the grave. Or the strength that makes life worth living, Marcus countered. I'm not ruling that possibility, but I'm also not counting on it. This is business, the most important business of my life. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then go into it with your eyes open. Have her investigated properly, not just Catherine's word. Already planning on it, Elias said finally. I want a full background check by morning. Financial history, employment record, personal relationships, everything. That night, alone in his penthouse apartment, Elias stood once again at floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Lila Winters was probably sitting beside her father's hospital bed, or working late in her studio, or lying awake worrying about bills she couldn't pay. Tomorrow, they would meet, two strangers brought together by circumstance and desperation, about to forge a bond that was simultaneously intimate and impersonal. Elias raised his glass of whiskey to his reflection. To contracts, he said to the empty room, and the cold comfort of clear terms. The city lights glittered below, indifferent to one man's descent into a marriage of convenience. And somewhere in that sprawl of buildings and lives, Lila Winters had no idea tomorrow would change everything. The private room at the Sterling Club smelled of leather and old money. Elias arrived early, a habit born from years of controlling every variable. The background check Marcus had delivered that morning lay memorized in his mind. Lila Ann Winters, born 29 years ago to Isabel and Robert Winters. Mother deceased 12 years. Father diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 18 months ago. Yale graduate, summa cum laude. Impeccable professional reputation. No criminal record, no scandal, no red flags beyond crushing medical debt. $847,000 and counting. The numbers told a story of desperation. Insurance covering barely 60%. Experimental treatments costing tens of thousands per month. A father's life measured in dollars she didn't have. Elias positioned himself by the window, studying the contract Marcus had prepared. 2 years minimum. Financial compensation substantial enough to erase debt and provide security. An heir clause that made his stomach tighten. Natural conception expected within the contract term, with medical interventions available if necessary. Infidelity penalties so severe they'd bankrupt kingdoms. $50 million forfeiture by the guilty party. Social media restrictions, public appearance requirements, confidentiality clauses with teeth. The door opened softly. Lila Winters wasn't what he'd expected. She wore a simple navy dress that suggested careful budgeting rather than poverty. Fabric quality good but not expensive. Cut classic enough to be timeless. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a practical twist that revealed a slender neck and delicate features. But it was her eyes that caught him. Forest green with gold flecks, intelligent and observant, carrying shadows that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. She met his gaze directly, neither flinching nor flirting, assessing. "Mr. Thorne?" Her voice was soft but steady, like still water over deep currents. "Miss Winters, please sit." He gestured to the conference table where Marcus had laid out 2 copies of the agreement, fountain pens positioned with mathematical precision. She sat with economical movement, hands folded in her lap, and said nothing. The silence stretched, but she didn't rush to fill it with nervous chatter. Another surprise. "You understand what this is?" "A transaction." Lila's fingers traced the edge of the contract without opening it. "You need a wife to satisfy an inheritance clause. I need money for my father's treatment." Lady Catherine was very thorough. "And you're comfortable with the terms?" Now she did open the folder, her eyes scanning with a focus that suggested she actually understood the legal language, not just reading, analyzing. Her expression remained neutral, but he saw the slight tightening around her eyes at certain clauses, the almost imperceptible pause on the heir requirement. "Section 7, the heir clause," she said after a moment. "You're aware this isn't guaranteed within 2 years. Fertility isn't a business contract that can be negotiated into compliance." Elias blinked, genuinely surprised. Most people gloss over that clause. She found the vulnerability immediately. "Modern medicine has solutions if necessary. IVF, fertility treatments, whatever proves needed. At my expense or yours?" Her tone remained neutral, but she caught the flash of something in her eyes. Strategy. She was negotiating. Covered under medical provisions, Section 12. He found himself appreciating the challenge. She flipped pages with practiced ease, verified his claim, and nodded. "The social media restrictions are extreme."
Necessary. My ex-fiancé used our relationship for publicity leverage. The words came out harder than he'd intended.
I won't have my private life become public commodity again." Her gaze lifted to his, and for a moment he saw understanding there. She knew betrayal too, though she didn't speak it. "My father," she said quietly. "He'll want to know why I'm suddenly married to someone he's never met. I'll need permission to tell him the truth." Immediate family only. Section 19, subsection C. Elias moved to sit across from her, equalizing their positions. "I know. I read it." A ghost of a smile crossed her lips, transforming her face briefly from careful to almost warm. Twice, once last night when Lady Catherine provided the preliminary draft, and again just now. The wording has changed slightly in Section 15 regarding property rights. Elias felt something close to admiration. "You caught that?" "Yes, Marcus adjusted it this morning. More favorable terms for you if the marriage extends beyond the 2-year minimum." "Why?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "This is already generous to the point of excessive." "Because fair contracts make better partnerships." It was true, though he hadn't examined his own reasoning closely until she'd asked. "And because I have no interest in you feeling exploited or trapped." Lila studied him for a long moment. "You're not what I expected," she said finally. "Neither are you." The admission surprised him. Marcus cleared his throat from his position by the door. "If there are no further questions, we should proceed. Mr. Thorne's timeline is quite pressing, and Miss Winters, I believe your father's next treatment cycle begins in 3 days." The reminder was strategic, and Elias saw Lila's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly, but she didn't react emotionally, didn't let desperation override logic. "What happens if I want to terminate the contract before the 2-year minimum?" she asked Marcus directly. Section 22. You forfeit all compensation and assume responsibility for any financial benefits already received. Additionally, liability for breach of contract penalties amounting to 30% of the total contract value. So approximately $400,000 in penalties, plus returning the medical expenses already covered. Her mental math was quick and accurate, effectively ensuring I'd be worse off than when I started. "Contracts require commitment from both parties," Elias said. "I need assurance you won't walk away the moment your father's immediate needs are met, just as you need assurance I won't simply end this arrangement if it becomes inconvenient. And if you want to terminate, same penalties apply." Section 23. Elias met her gaze steadily. "This is mutual obligation, Miss Winters. We're both locked in." She was quiet for another moment, weighing options, measuring risks, considering alternatives she probably didn't have. Finally, she picked up the fountain pen, testing its weight. "No emotions," she said, though it came out almost like a question. "No expectations," Elias replied. 2 years, minimum, with option to extend or separate by mutual agreement. And an heir. He said it clinically, but he saw the slight flush on her cheeks, the reality of what that requirement meant, breaking through the business veneer. "Yes, he wouldn't soften it, Miss Winters. That particular aspect of our agreement will be handled with whatever dignity and privacy we can manage." Something flickered in her expression. Relief, maybe, or appreciation for the acknowledgement. He held the pen poised over the signature line, and Elias found himself holding his breath. "This is insane," Lila whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. Then louder, "But my father needs 3 more treatment cycles to qualify for the experimental trial, and I'm out of options." "So am I," Elias admitted. I've built Thorn Industries for 15 years. It's not just a company, it's legacy, employees, innovation that matters. I won't watch it be gutted by hostile acquisition because my grandfather had archaic ideas about succession. Their eyes met across the table. Two people about to bind their lives together for all the wrong reasons, or perhaps the only reasons that mattered: survival and necessity. They signed simultaneously, the scratch of fountain pens sealing a fate neither had chosen but both needed. Elias watched Lila's signature take shape, neat, controlled, with a slight flourish on the W that suggested there was more personality beneath the careful exterior than she'd shown. When it was done, Marcus collected the documents with efficient professionalism. Marriage license is already prepared. The ceremony can be conducted as early as tomorrow morning at City Hall, or we can arrange something more private if preferred. Private, both Elias and Lila said simultaneously, then shared a brief, awkward smile at the synchronicity. There's a judge who owes me a favor. He can perform the ceremony in his chambers. Minimal witnesses required. Myself and one other will suffice legally. Tomorrow at 10, Elias decided. That gives Miss Winters time to prepare and make arrangements for her father's care during the transition. Lila stood, and Elias rose with her, years of ingrained courtesy taking over. She extended her hand with formal precision, and he took it, surprised by the warmth of her skin, the unexpected firmness of her grip. I suppose I should say congratulations, she offered, and there was something almost wry in her tone. Welcome to your cage, Mrs. Thorne. The words came out more bitter than he'd intended. She smiled then, sad and knowing. Yours too, Mr. Thorne, yours too. As she left, Elias remained standing, staring at the closed door. Marcus moved to his side. Last chance to reconsider? Marcus said quietly. There's nothing to reconsider. Elias straightened his cuffs. This is business. Is it? Marcus asked. Because the way you looked at her just now didn't seem very businesslike. Elias ignored the comment. But as he walked out into the cool evening air, he found himself thinking about green eyes and quiet strength, about a woman who'd negotiated her imprisonment with dignity and intelligence. Lila Winters was going to be his wife, and despite every wall he'd built, every lesson he'd learned about keeping emotions separate from business, something about her had slipped past his defenses in their brief meeting. Not desire, he was too controlled for that, but curiosity, perhaps, recognition of a kindred spirit. Tomorrow they'd marry. Tomorrow the contract would become reality. But tonight, driving home through city streets, Elias couldn't quite shake the image of Lila's sad smile or the uncomfortable awareness that maybe, just maybe, he'd gotten himself into something far more complicated than a simple business arrangement.
The penthouse had always felt too large for one person. Now, with Lila living there, it felt simultaneously more full and more empty. They'd been married for 5 days, 5 days of careful choreography, separate bedrooms on opposite ends of the apartment, cordial breakfasts where they read separate sections of the newspaper, professional distance maintained with the precision of dancers who'd never learned the same steps. Elias watched her from the kitchen doorway on their 5th morning. She sat at the island in worn Yale sweatpants and an oversized sweater, reading the arts section while absently eating yogurt. Her hair was down for the first time since he'd met her, waves of chestnut falling past her shoulders. She looked younger without the careful styling, more vulnerable.
She must have felt his gaze because she looked up, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Sorry," Elias said. "Didn't mean to stare, just getting coffee." "There's a fresh pot," she gestured to the counter. "I made it strong, hope that's okay." "Perfect, actually." He poured himself a cup, then hesitated. "How's your father?" It was the first personal question he'd asked since the wedding. Lila's expression softened slightly. "Good. The first treatment cycle went well. He's asking questions about you." She smiled wryly. "I'm getting creative with my answers." "What did you tell him?" "That we met through mutual acquaintances, that it was fast but felt right, that you're intense but kind." She paused. "Was that okay?" "It's accurate enough." Elias leaned against the counter, coffee warming his hands. "Does he believe you?" "I don't think so, but he's choosing to." Lila set down her spoon. "He knows I wouldn't do this without good reason. He just doesn't know the reason is him." The guilt in her voice was palpable. Elias found himself wanting to ease it. "You're saving his life," he said quietly. "That's not something to feel guilty about." "Isn't it? Using someone else's desperation to save him?" She met his eyes. "We're both doing things we hate because the alternative is worse." The honesty surprised him. Most people in her position would maintain the fiction, keep up appearances. Lila simply stated the uncomfortable truth. "The Belmont Foundation Gala is tomorrow night, our first major public appearance as a couple. Catherine's arranged stylists to come this afternoon. Hair, makeup, dress fitting, whatever you need. I can do my own. I know you can, but there are expectations, standards. Society looks for reasons to dismiss people who don't meet them. I won't have you subjected to that." Lila studied him for a long moment. "You're protecting me." "I'm protecting us both. If they come after you, they come after the marriage. If they come after the marriage, they come after the company." He softened slightly. "But yes, also protecting you." "Why?" "Because you kept your end of the bargain. I'll keep mine." He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup. "The stylists will be here at 2. Marcus will brief you on who's who at the gala. Allies, enemies, people to avoid. It'll be tedious but necessary." "Elias," her voice stopped him at the doorway. "Thank you for not making this harder than it has to be." He turned back. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with something else, something that made his chest tighten uncomfortably. "We're in this together. Might as well not make each other miserable." After he left, Lila sat alone at the island, yogurt forgotten. 5 days married to a man she barely knew. 5 days of careful distance and professional courtesy. 5 days of noticing things she shouldn't. The way Elias took his coffee black but added sugar when he thought no one was looking. The scar above his left eyebrow, a thin white line barely visible. The way he stood at the windows late at night, silhouetted against the city lights, looking like someone carrying the weight of kingdoms. She shouldn't be noticing these things, shouldn't be cataloging them like precious artifacts. This was a contract, a transaction. But Elias Thorne was becoming harder to keep at arm's length, even as they maintained their careful distance. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. "How's married life? Send me a photo of you two. I want to see this mystery husband who swept you off your feet so fast." Lila stared at the message. They didn't have photos, hadn't even thought about it. Their wedding was Marcus, a judge, and a courthouse clerk who looked bored by the whole proceeding. She found Elias in his home office, buried in spreadsheets. "My dad wants a photo of us, together, looking like we actually know each other." Elias looked up from his laptop, and she saw him processing the problem. Makes sense. We should have several, actually. For social media, even if we don't use it, people will expect evidence. So we need to fake wedding photos? Or just take some casual ones? Here, now, before we overthink it. Now?
Why not? He gestured to his office, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, warm lighting from the desk lamp. Nice background. Natural. We can say it's where we spend time together. Lila pulled out her phone with shaking hands. This was absurd. They were staging intimacy for her dying father. "Come here," Elias said softly. He positioned himself by the window, city visible behind him. "Stand next to me, like you belong there." She moved into the space beside him, acutely aware of his height, his warmth, the expensive cologne that smelled like cedar and something darker. "Closer," he murmured. "We're supposed to be married." His arm came around her waist, pulling her against his side. Lila fit there perfectly, her head just reaching his shoulder. She held up the phone, angling for the shot, but her hands were trembling. "Here." Elias took the phone from her, his reach longer. "I've got it." He took several shots. In the photos, they looked real. Lila leaning into him slightly, Elias's hand on her waist, possessive but not controlling. Both of them with small smiles that looked genuine because in that moment, pressed against him, feeling safe and warm, Lila had forgotten to fake it. "These work," Elias said, reviewing them. "I'll send them to your phone." "Thank you." But neither of them moved. They stood there, his arm still around her waist, her body still pressed to his side. The moment stretched. "Tomorrow night," Elias said, rougher than usual, "at the gala. There will be photographers, cameras. We'll need to sell this." "I know." "Dancing, probably. Social expectations." "I can dance." Lila looked up at him, and his face was closer than she realized. "My mother insisted, said every woman should know how to move through spaces she doesn't belong." "You belong," Elias said, and the intensity in his voice made her breath catch. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The phone buzzed in his hand, breaking the moment. Marcus, board member requesting meeting, urgent. Elias stepped back, and the loss of warmth was immediate. "I need to handle this." "Of course." Lila moved toward the door, then stopped. "Elias, those photos, they look real?" "Yeah, real." After she left, Elias stared at the photos on her phone. Lila tucked against his side, both of them looking like they actually wanted to be there. This was supposed to be business, clinical, safe. Instead, he'd just spent 5 minutes with his wife pressed against him, and every instinct had screamed, "Mine," in a way that had nothing to do with contracts and everything to do with the way she fit perfectly in the space beside him. 5 days married, and Elias was already in trouble. The Belmont Foundation Gala glittered like something from a dream or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Lila stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing herself. The emerald silk gown fit like it had been painted on, the color making her eyes luminous. Professional stylists had refined her natural beauty without erasing it. Hair in an elegant updo, makeup understated but flawless. She looked like someone who belonged to Elias Thorne's side. She looked like a lie. "Ready?" Elias appeared in the doorway, and Lila's breath caught. He wore a custom tuxedo that made him look like he'd walked out of a cologne ad, all sharp lines and elegant danger. His gray eyes swept over her, and something flickered in his expression before the Ice King mask slammed back into place. "You look beautiful," he said, and it sounded like an accusation. "You look angry about it." "I'm not." He stopped, started over. "This would be easier if you looked different." "Different how?" "Less like someone I'd actually want to marry." The honesty stunned her.
They stared at each other across the bedroom, and Lila felt something dangerous building between them, something the contract definitely didn't cover. "We should go," she said finally. The gala was held in the Belmont Museum's main hall, 3 stories of marble and glass, paintings worth millions on the walls, champagne flowing like water. Lila had been to events like this before, but never as the main attraction. Because they were. Every head turned as they descended the grand staircase. Whispers followed like perfume. The Ice King married in secret. Who's she? 3 weeks, scandalous. She's nobody, literally nobody. Elias's hand tightened on her waist. Ignore them. Hard to ignore 100 people staring at you.
Then stare back. You're a thorn now. Act like you own the room. So she did. Lila lifted her chin, met eyes directly, smiled with just enough mystery to make people wonder. And slowly, the whispers changed tone, less dismissive, more curious. Richard Cordova materialized first, his smile predatory. Mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit that screamed, "I'm richer than you." "Thorn, congratulations on your surprising nuptials." His eyes raked over Lila with assessment that made her skin crawl. "Cordova," Elias pulled Lila closer, the gesture protective. "My wife, Lila." What happened next surprised everyone. Lila extended her hand with perfect poise and proceeded to verbally dismantle Cordova's recent acquisition strategy with surgical precision. "The Northbridge portfolio," she said conversationally. "Aggressive timing given market volatility. Either you got it at a steal or you knew something the market didn't. Insider information, perhaps? The SEC might be interested." Cordova's smile turned glacial. "Quite the analyst you've married, Thorn." "Quite the partner," Elias corrected, something like pride in his voice. As Cordova retreated, Elias looked at Lila with new appreciation. "You just made an enemy." "He was already your enemy. I just made him aware I'm not decorative." She accepted champagne from a passing waiter, hand steady, despite having faced down one of the city's most dangerous executives. "Isn't that what you need? A wife who can play the game?" Before he could answer, the orchestra struck up a waltz. Elias offered his hand with the kind of formal precision that suggested this was required, not desired. "Shall we? Society expects the newlyweds to dance." Lila let him lead her to the ballroom floor. His hand settled on her waist with the kind of careful distance that suggested he was measuring inches. Her palm fit into his like it belonged there. The music swelled, and they began to move. Lila had learned to waltz from her mother, but dancing with Elias was different than dancing with instructors or awkward college boyfriends. He led with absolute confidence, anticipating her movements before she made them, guiding her through turns with the kind of precision that came from years of controlling every variable. "You're good at this," she said softly. "Corporate galas require certain skills." His voice was controlled, but his hand had tightened on her waist, pulling her fractionally closer. "My mother insisted I learn young." "Tell me about her." "Why?" "Because I'm your wife, and I don't know anything about your family beyond what Google tells me." Elias was quiet for a moment, navigating them through a complex turn. Other couples blurred into insignificance. The ballroom seemed to contract around them. "She was kind," he said finally. "Kinder than my father, certainly. She tried to soften his edges, teach me that business didn't have to mean ruthlessness." He paused. "She died when I was 23. Cancer.
fast and brutal. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was 15 years ago." But Lila heard the grief beneath the words, the loss that time hadn't healed. "My mother died when I was 17, car accident. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. My father never really recovered." "Is that why you're doing this? For him?" "Partly, but also because I'm tired of feeling powerless, tired of watching him die slowly while I can't do anything. This contract, it's not romantic, but it's something. It's action." Elias looked down at her, and his eyes were softer than she'd seen them. "You're braver than you think. So are you, walking into a marriage with a stranger because your grandfather tried to control you from beyond the grave. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Same thing sometimes." They turned in perfect synchronization, and Lila became acutely aware of how close they were. His chest against hers, his breath stirring her hair, the way her pulse fluttered where his thumb rested on her waist. This wasn't supposed to feel like this, wasn't supposed to feel like anything. "This isn't real," Elias said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Lila agreed, even though her body was screaming the opposite. "It's not." But when the music ended and they separated, it felt like tearing, like something that had begun fitting together was being forced apart. They stood there, hands still joined, breathless from dancing. Around them, applause, approving murmurs. They look perfect together. If only they knew the truth. Elias lifted Lila's hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with practiced elegance. The gesture was for show, had to be for show. So why did it send electricity up her arm? "Thank you for the dance, Mrs. Thorne." "Thank you, Mr. Thorne." They separated, moving through the gala like satellites orbiting each other. Lila spoke with donors, made small talk, played the role of attentive wife with the kind of skill that came from years of faking normalcy while her world crumbled. But every time she looked up, Elias was watching her, and every time he looked away, she found herself tracking his movement across the room. This was dangerous. This was exactly what they'd promised not to do. At midnight, they left in his car, silence thick between them. Lila kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief, and Elias loosened his tie with jerky movements. "You were perfect tonight," he said finally. "So were you." "That's not what I meant." He glanced at her, then back at the road. "You handled Cordova brilliantly, made allies with the Patterson family. Even my board members were impressed." "Good. That's what the contract requires, right? Public appearances, social success." "Right." But he sounded unconvinced. They rode the elevator to the penthouse in continued silence. Lila went to unclasp her necklace, but the mechanism stuck. She fumbled with it, frustration building. "Here." His voice was soft behind her. "Let me." His fingers brushed the nape in her neck, and Lila drew a sharp breath. He froze. "Sorry, I didn't. It's fine. Just sensitive there." He worked the clasp with careful attention, and Lila was excruciatingly aware of his proximity. The warmth of him, the cedar scent of his cologne, the way his breath stirred her hair. "There's another clasp, your locket. I never take it off, but I should probably—"
His fingers found the delicate silver chain beneath the emeralds, a simple locket she'd worn every day since her mother died. As he unclasped it, the locket swung open in his palm, and the world tilted. Elias went completely still. His breathing stopped, then started again, harsh and irregular. "Where did you get this?" His voice came out strangled. Confused, Lila turned, saw what he held, saw the photograph inside the locket, her mother, young and smiling, holding baby Lila, and the man standing behind them, hands on Isabel's shoulders, looking at her like he was his entire world. The man was Jonathan Thorne. Lila recognized him from photos in Elias's penthouse, the portrait in the hallway, the formal family pictures. She couldn't finish. My father. Elias's face had gone white. That's my father with your mother. The locket trembled in his hand. Baby Lila in the photo couldn't have been more than a few months old. Jonathan Thorne looking young, early 30s maybe. The timestamp on the back of the photo in her mother's handwriting. Paris, 1996, the happiest I've ever been. No. Lila's voice came out strangled. That's not possible. My mother would have said. If she knew who he was, she would have told me his name. She would have... Maybe she didn't know his real name. Elias's mind was clearly racing, doing math she didn't want him to do. Maybe he lied, used an alias. Why would he? Because he was married. The words came out flat. To my mother. In 1996, they'd been married for 8 years. Silence. The kind that had weight. Texture. The kind that crushed. Lila's hands were shaking. She pressed them to her stomach, feeling nauseous. The timing fits, Elias continued, voice mechanical, like he was reading a report. You're 29. My father had a business trip to France 30 years ago. 3 months. He came back different, distant. My mother cried a lot that year. Stop. Lila backed away from him. Don't do math. Don't make this. We need to verify. DNA test. Tomorrow. Elias. Tomorrow. The word came out harsh. Then he visibly controlled himself. We need to know for certain. What? That we're... She couldn't say it. The word lodged in her throat like glass. That's not possible. It's not. But even as she said it, Lila was remembering things. The way people sometimes said she looked familiar. The intelligence that came too easily. The business sense she'd never needed before, but had deployed against Cordova tonight with instinctive precision. The way dancing with Elias had felt like coming home. I think I'm going to be sick, she whispered. She ran to the bathroom. Elias heard her vomiting, heard the water running, heard her crying, quiet, broken sobs that made something in his chest crack. He stood alone with the locket, his father's young face smiling up at him. Evidence, accusation, explanation for why Lila's eyes had seemed familiar from the first moment, why her intelligence felt like looking in a mirror, why being near her felt like recognition instead of discovery. Biology recognizing what they couldn't. His phone was in his hand before he consciously decided to call. Marcus answered on the second ring, groggy. Elias, it's almost 1 a.m. I need a DNA test, priority rush. His voice sounded mechanical even to his own ears. Use the hairbrush in the guest bathroom. Mine is in the master. Don't tell me you're doing it, just do it. What's going on? I married my sister. He hung up. Lila emerged from the bathroom, pale as paper, mascara streaked. She looked destroyed. We danced at the gala. I actually thought maybe this could become... Don't. Elias's voice was sharp. Don't say it. Why not? What's the point of pretending now? I was falling for you, Elias. For 3 weeks I've been falling for someone I can't fall for. And the worst part is, I can't even regret it, because you're the first person in 10 years who's made me feel... She stopped, covered her mouth. I should go. Somewhere. Anywhere. Where? I don't know. I can't be near you right now, because I still want to be, and that's... Her voice broke. The door to her bedroom closed behind her. Elias heard the lock click.
He stood alone in the living room, still holding the locket, still seeing his father's face, still feeling the ghost of Lila pressed against him during the waltz. His phone buzzed. Marcus, samples collected, results in 72 hours. Elias, what the hell is going on? 72 hours to hope the photo was wrong, that his father had a doppelganger, that biology was lying. But Elias already knew the truth. He'd spent 3 weeks falling for his sister, and the DNA test wouldn't change the fact that part of him, the part that made him sick to acknowledge, was still falling.
Day 1. Morning. Lila didn't come out of her room. Elias stood outside her door at 7 a.m., coffee in hand, trying to decide if knocking was intrusive or necessary. He settled for setting the mug on the floor by her door and walking away. At 8 a.m., he checked. The coffee was gone. At work, he couldn't focus. Board meetings blurred. Marcus kept giving him concerned looks that Elias ignored. The DNA samples were at the lab. Results in 72 hours. 72 hours of not knowing for certain, even though he already knew. His phone buzzed at noon. Lila, I'm going to stay with Dad for a few days. Need space to think. Elias stared at the message, wanted to argue, had no grounds to. He typed, "Okay, let me know if you need anything." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Thank you for the coffee." Such a small thing, but it felt like she was trying, like despite everything, she didn't hate him. He wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. Day 2, evening. The penthouse felt emptier than it had before Lila moved in. Elias found himself in her room, not snooping, just being there. Her scent lingered, jasmine and something softer. Books on art restoration stacked on the nightstand, a half-finished crossword puzzle, reading glasses she thought no one knew about, evidence of a life he'd barely learned before it imploded. His phone rang. Catherine. "Elias, darling, how was the gala? I heard you two were the talk of the evening." Something in her tone made his jaw clench. "We managed." "More than managed, from what I hear. Richard Cordova was quite put out by Lila's little analysis. You've trained her well." "I didn't train her. She's brilliant on her own." "Of course she is. Intelligence runs in the Thorne family, after all." The comment was innocent, had to be innocent. So why did it make his blood run cold? "What do you want, Catherine?" "Just checking in, making sure everything is proceeding as planned." "It's proceeding." "Good, because the board meeting is in 5 months. The clock's ticking on that heir clause, isn't it?" After she hung up, Elias sat in the dark, Catherine's words echoing. Intelligence runs in the Thorne family. She'd said it casually, too casually, and suddenly Elias was remembering things. Catherine's involvement in bringing him and Lila together, the perfect timing, the way she'd known about Lila's exact financial situation. "I've known the Winters family distantly for years." Distantly, such a careful word. He pulled out his laptop and started digging. Isabel Winters, Catherine Ashford, his father, connection points. It took 3 hours, but he found it. A charity gala in Paris, 1995. Guest list included Jonathan Thorne, representing Thorne Industries, Isabel Moreau, her maiden name before marrying Robert Winters, and Catherine Ashford, attending with her late husband. They'd all been in Paris the year before Lila was born. Catherine had known her father was having an affair, had possibly even facilitated it, and 30 years later, she'd brought the product of that affair,
directly to Elias's door. His phone was ringing before he consciously decided to call Marcus. "I need you to dig into Catherine Ashford, everything, her finances, her connections to my family, her relationship with my father, every detail for the last 40 years. Elias, it's midnight. I don't care. Something's wrong. Catherine's involvement in this marriage, it's too convenient, too perfect." He paused. "I think she knew Lila was our sister and set us up anyway." Silence on the line. Then, "You think she knew Lila was your sister and set you up anyway?" "I think she knew. I think that was the point." Day 2, morning. Lila sat beside her father's hospital bed, holding his hand while he slept. The morphine kept him comfortable, but lucid moments were becoming rarer. She hadn't told him about the locket, hadn't told him that the man her mother loved, the man in the photo, was Jonathan Thorne, that his daughter was currently married to Jonathan's son, that she might be in love with her own brother. The thought made her stomach clench. "You look troubled, sweetheart." She looked up. Her father's eyes were open, clearer than they had been in days. "Just tired, Dad." Liar, but he smiled. "You've always been a terrible liar. Gets it from your mother. She could never hide what she was feeling." "Tell me about her." Lila needed to know, needed context. "About when you met." Robert's expression went distant with memory. "She was working at a gallery in Nice. I was backpacking through Europe, pretending to find myself." He chuckled. "Found her instead. She was sad when we met, heartbroken over someone who'd left, never told me who. But she got over him, married you?" "Eventually. Took a year of me showing up every day, making her laugh, proving I wasn't going anywhere." His grip tightened on Lila's hand. "She loved me. I never doubted that. But sometimes I'd catch her looking at old photos with this expression, like she was remembering someone who mattered more than she wanted to admit." "Did that bother you?" "At first. Then I realized we all have ghosts, people who marked us before we found our forever person. Isabel loved that man, whoever he was, but she chose me, built a life with me, gave me you." His eyes filled with tears. That was enough. Lila couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. "This husband of yours, Elias, does he make you happy?" "It's complicated. Love usually is."
"It's not love, Dad, it's—" "Don't lie to a dying man, sweetheart. I see how you say his name, how your whole face changes." He smiled. "Whatever brought you two together, whatever circumstances aligned, hold on to that. Life's too short for pride or fear. If only it were that simple." Day 2, afternoon. Marcus arrived at Elias's office carrying 3 boxes of documents. His expression was grim. "You were right. Catherine knew." Elias felt his stomach drop. "Show me." Marcus spread out the evidence like a prosecutor building a case. 1995. Catherine and your father both attended the Paris Autumn Gala. Isabel Moreau was working as an event coordinator. Records show your father and Isabel left together that night. Catherine was photographed watching them leave. A photo. Jonathan Thorne and young Isabel Moreau exiting the gala. In the background, Catherine's face, expression calculating. Your father's business trip was supposed to be 2 weeks. He extended it to 3 months. During that time, he and Isabel were seen together repeatedly at various events. Catherine was present at several of them. More photos. Jonathan and Isabel at cafes, museums, parks, always with Catherine visible somewhere in the background. When your father finally returned home, records show he had a phone call with Catherine that lasted 2 hours. The next day, he transferred $500,000
to a Swiss account in Catherine's name. Hush money. Or payment for services rendered. Facilitating the affair? Covering it up? We don't know. Marcus pulled out another document. But here's where it gets interesting. That Swiss account remained dormant for 29 years until 18 months ago when Catherine started making strategic withdrawals. When Lila's father got sick. Exactly. The withdrawals correspond to insurance denials on Robert Winter's treatments. The denied claims all trace back to shell companies that Catherine controls. Elias felt rage building in his chest, cold and precise. She engineered Lila's desperation, made her desperate enough to accept my proposal. It looks that way. And there's more. Marcus pulled out financial records. 3 years ago, around the time Victoria Chen betrayed you, Catherine's investment portfolio shifted dramatically. She started buying up Thorne Industries shares through various shell companies. Currently, she controls approximately 15% through these hidden holdings. Combined with the board members she's influenced, she's positioning herself for a hostile takeover if you lose control. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Catherine had engineered everything. His father's affair, the cover-up, Lila's desperation, the introduction, the marriage. She'd spent 30 years playing chess with human pieces. Why? Elias asked quietly. What's her end game? I'm still digging, but I found this. Marcus pulled out a final document. 35 years ago, your grandfather forced your father to choose between marrying your mother or continuing a business partnership with Catherine's family. Your father chose your mother. The partnership ended. Catherine's family business collapsed within 5 years. So this is revenge. Long-term, carefully orchestrated revenge. She couldn't attack your father directly, he was too protected. But she knew about Lila, knew about the affair baby. And when your grandfather's will created an opening, she saw her chance. To destroy me using my own sister. To create a situation where you'd lose everything, the company, your reputation, your sanity. Either you'd fail to meet the will's requirements and lose the company to her orchestrated takeover, or you'd discover you married your sister and be destroyed by scandal. Elias stood, moved to the windows. The city spread below him, indifferent to one man's calculated destruction. She didn't account for one thing, he said softly. What? That Lila and I might actually care about each other, enough to fight back. Day 2, evening. Lila returned to the penthouse at 10 p.m. Elias was waiting in the living room, papers spread across the coffee table. We need to talk, he said. She hung her coat with careful precision. If this is about the DNA test, Catherine knew. He cut her off. About your mother, about my father, about you. She's known since before you were born. Lila went very still. What? He showed her everything. The photos, the financial records, the 30-year conspiracy. Lila read through it all with growing horror, her face draining of color with each new piece of evidence. She engineered my father's medical debt, made me desperate, brought me to you specifically because
Because she wanted to destroy me, using you as the weapon. Lila looked up at him, eyes swimming with tears. I've never been anything but someone else's tool. My mother's secret, Catherine's pawn, your contract wife. No, Elias crossed to her, took her hands. You're brilliant and strong and brave enough to face this nightmare with your eyes open. You're my... He stopped, couldn't finish, because what was she? His wife? His sister? His partner? His victim? All of it. None of it. The DNA results come back tomorrow, Lila said quietly. We'll know for sure. I already know. So do I. She met his eyes. But we need the proof for what comes next. What comes next?
We burn her down. Lila's voice was steel. Catherine did this. All of it. She doesn't get to win. Elias felt something fierce bloom in his chest. Together, together. They stood there, hands joined, facing the wreckage of their lives. Tomorrow would bring confirmation of their worst fears, but tonight they had each other. Not as husband and wife, not yet as siblings, but as allies, partners, two people choosing to fight rather than surrender. "I'm sorry," Elias said softly, "for all of this, for my family's secrets destroying your life." "Your family secrets are my family secrets now." Lila squeezed his hands. "We're in this together, remember? For better or worse." "Pretty sure marriage vows don't apply when you accidentally marry your sister." "Pretty sure they apply even more." She smiled, sad but genuine. "Because we're still family, just different family than we planned." They separated reluctantly, moving to their separate bedrooms. But at his door, Elias looked back. "Lila?" She turned. "I'm glad it was you, despite everything. If I had to accidentally marry someone, I'm glad it was you." Her smile was heartbreaking. "Me too." Day 3. The verdict. The envelope from Gene Tech Laboratories sat on Elias's desk at 9 a.m. Lila sat across from him, both of them staring at it like it might explode. "On 3? Lila suggested. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Elias opened it. The words came to focus with brutal clarity. Conclusion. Based on analysis of 23 genetic markers, the tested individuals share approximately 25% of their DNA, consistent with half-sibling relationship. Probability of half-sibling relationship, 99.97%. The paper trembled in Elias's hands. He'd had known since the moment he saw the locket, but knowing and having scientific proof were different things. 99.97%, Lila said quietly. "That's pretty definitive." "Yes."
She was calm, too calm. Elias recognized the shock response. He was probably wearing the same expression. "So," Lila continued, "we're half-siblings, which means the marriage is problematic. Legally voidable, probably mandatory to annul given the circumstances. And the inheritance clause, the heir requirement? I can't produce an heir with you. The marriage doesn't satisfy the will's terms." Elias set down the paper with careful precision. "Which means Catherine wins. The board takes control. She's been positioning for exactly this outcome." Lila stood, started pacing. There has to be a way, some loophole, some legal argument. "Marcus is already looking, but the will is explicit. Legitimate heir means from the CEO's line. You're my sister, not my child." "So we lose." "So I lose," Elias corrected. "You walk away with the medical coverage guaranteed in the contract. Your father gets his treatment. You're protected. And you lose everything you've built for 15 years. "Yes." Lila stopped pacing, turned to face him. "No. No? No, I refuse to let that happen. Catherine orchestrated this entire disaster. She doesn't get to win." "Lila, there's always a way." Her eyes were blazing now, all traces of shock burned away by fury. "We're both brilliant, strategically minded, and now we're royally pissed off. That makes us dangerous." Despite everything, Elias felt himself smile. "What are you proposing?" "I don't know yet, but we have," she checked her watch, 4 hours until the board meeting Catherine called.
4 hours to find a way to destroy her before she destroys us. That's not enough time. Then we'd better get started. Lila grabbed her phone. First, we call Marcus, get every piece of evidence against Catherine ready to present. Second, we need a corporate lawyer who specializes in hostile takeover defense. Third, we need to control the narrative, Elias finished, following her logic. If Catherine's going to leak the sibling situation, we leak it first, our way, our terms, with full context about her manipulation, turning her weapon against her. They looked at each other, and something clicked into place. The same strategic wavelength, the same refusal to quit, the same recognition that they were stronger together than Catherine had anticipated. She wanted to destroy us, Lila said softly. She accidentally made us family. The real kind, not the DNA kind. Both kinds, Lila smiled, fierce and determined. We're both kinds of family now, and that's going to be her downfall. The Thorn Industries boardroom filled with predators in tailored suits. Noon. Catherine's carefully selected allies filed in with the confidence of sharks smelling blood. She sat at the far end in dove gray, every inch the society matriarch about to claim her prize. This emergency session was meant to be Elias's public execution. At 12:01, Elias walked in with Lila beside him. The whispers started immediately. DNA test confirmed. Married his own sister. Scandal of the century. Catherine's smile was warm, practiced, predatory. Thank you all for coming. As you know, Mr. Thorne's grandfather's will contains specific succession requirements that have not been met, that have been deliberately sabotaged by you, Catherine, for 30 years. The room went silent. Elias, darling, these accusations are documented, witnessed, and currently being filed with the FBI. Marcus Webb entered through the side door, flanked by federal agents and lawyers carrying boxes, lots of boxes. What you're looking at is evidence of systematic fraud, conspiracy to manipulate corporate succession, and felony blackmail. Lila moved to the presentation screen, connecting her laptop with steady hands. The first slide appeared. Catherine and Jonathan Thorne at the Paris Autumn Gala, 1995. 30 years ago, Lila said, voice steady, Lady Catherine facilitated an affair between Jonathan Thorne and my mother, Isabel Moreau.
Click. More photos. Jonathan and Isabel together. Catherine always visible in the background. She knew about their relationship, helped conceal it from Elias's mother. And when my mother became pregnant, Catherine knew about that too. The room erupted. Board members looked at each other, at Catherine, at the evidence mounting on screen. Click. Financial records appeared. 18 months ago, Lila continued, Catherine began systematically denying insurance claims for my father's cancer treatment. Every denial traces back to shell companies she controls. Every expensive procedure recommended by doctors on her payroll. She engineered my financial crisis. Click. The contract, the introduction, the marriage certificate. 3 weeks ago, Catherine introduced me to Elias as a solution to his inheritance problem. What she didn't mention was that she'd known for 30 years that I was Jonathan Thorne's biological daughter. Lila's voice hardened. She deliberately arranged a marriage between half-siblings. Elias took over. This morning, we received DNA confirmation. He displayed the results. Lila Winters is my half-sister. Catherine knew this, orchestrated our meeting anyway. Why? Marcus pulled out a tablet. Because Lady Catherine has been positioning for a hostile takeover of Thorn Industries for 15 years. She currently controls 15% of company shares through shell companies.
Combined with board members she's influenced, she was positioned to take control when Elias failed to meet the will's heir requirement. Click. The financial conspiracy laid out in devastating detail. But Catherine made one critical mistake, Elias said, watching her face drain of color. She assumed the DNA revelation would destroy us, that we'd be too horrified, too ashamed, too broken to fight back. She didn't account for us becoming actual family, not the DNA kind, the choosing each other kind. Catherine stood abruptly. This is absurd. You have no proof that I knew? Marcus played applause on audio. Catherine's voice filled the room. Of course I knew about Isabel's pregnancy. I helped Jonathan hide it, paid her to disappear, and 30 years later, I finally found a use for his bastard daughter. The recording continued, Catherine detailing her manipulation, her revenge plot, her 15-year plan, damning, devastating, complete. When it ended, silence reigned. Catherine looked at Elias with naked hatred. You were supposed to be broken, desperate, alone. I was, Elias agreed. Then I found something worth more than your revenge fantasy. Family, Lila said softly. The federal agents moved forward. Catherine didn't resist as handcuffs clicked around her wrists, but her eyes never left Elias. You'll still lose the company, she hissed. The will requires an heir. You can't produce one with your sister. I may not get it, but neither will you. You're right, Elias agreed. I can't produce a Thorne heir. He clicked to the final slide. Legal documents, corporate restructuring, DNA analysis with different highlighting. But Lila already is one. The room erupted again. Catherine went still, understanding dawning too late. My grandfather's will requires the CEO to be married with a clear line of succession. It requires a Thorne heir to secure the family legacy. It says nothing about the heir being the CEO's child. Marcus picked up the explanation. Lila Winters is Jonathan Thorne's biological daughter. Under inheritance law, she has equal claim to family assets as Elias. She is a legitimate Thorne heir. The succession is secured. As of this morning, Lila holds 49% of Thorne Industries. I hold 51%. All major decisions require both signatures. The will's requirements are satisfied. More than satisfied, Marcus added. The board's succession concerns are resolved. The family line continues, and attempts to manipulate corporate control through blackmail and fraud are now federal crimes. Catherine was let out, her 15-year plan collapsing in a single hour. The agents had evidence, witnesses, recorded confessions. She'd played the long game and lost to two people she underestimated. As the doors closed behind her, Richard Cordova, Catherine's strongest ally, cleared his throat. This is unprecedented. Yes, Elias agreed. Any objections to the succession plan? Silence. No one objected. They were too busy recalculating alliances. Then we're done here, Elias said, gathering his materials. Marcus will handle the legal paperwork. The FBI will need statements about Catherine's manipulation, and Lila and I have a press conference in 30 minutes. He and Lila walked out together. In the elevator, she leaned against the wall, shaking. That was insane, she whispered. That was family. Elias looked at their reflections in the polished elevator doors. Same eyes, same determined jaw, same exhausted relief. We just destroyed a woman in front of 20 witnesses. We just saved each other. The elevator descended. Outside, media waited. Questions, scandals, their private pain about to become public spectacle.
But Lila's hand found his, squeezed, held on. Ready to face the wolves? he asked. Only if you are. The hotel conference room was packed with reporters, cameras, and people who smelled blood in the water. Elias and Lila stood behind a podium bearing the Thorn Industries logo, flanked by lawyers who'd briefed them for 2 hours on what to say and, more importantly, what not to say. Don't appear defensive, don't admit criminal knowledge, don't speculate on motives. Do control the narrative, do present facts, do appear united. Elias stepped to the microphone. Flashbulbs exploded. Thank you for coming. I'll make a brief statement, then we'll take limited questions. He took a breath. This was it. No going back. 3 weeks ago, I married Lila Winters in response to my grandfather's will requiring the CEO of Thorn Industries to be married with a clear line of succession. What we didn't know at the time was that Lila is my half-sister. The room erupted, shouted questions, gasps, camera flashes intensifying. Elias waited for silence. When it didn't come, Lila stepped to the microphone. Quiet. Her voice was soft, but it carried. The room gradually settled. Let him finish. Elias continued. This morning, DNA testing confirmed that Lila is the biological daughter of my father, Jonathan Thorn, from a relationship that predated his marriage to my mother by... He paused, recalculating. Catherine's evidence had shown the affair was during the marriage, not before. Honesty was better. From an extramarital affair 30 years ago. More gasps, more camera flashes. My father passed away 10 years ago. He never knew about Lila. Her mother, Isabel Winters, apparently chose not to tell him about her pregnancy. But someone else did know. He paused for impact. Lady Catherine Ashford, a longtime friend of my family, was aware of both the affair and Lila's existence. She deliberately concealed this information for 30 decades. Lila took over. 6 weeks ago, Lady Ashford approached me with a business proposition. I was drowning in medical debt from my father's cancer treatment. She offered to introduce me to Elias as a potential wife, presenting it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. Her voice remained steady. What she didn't mention was that she'd been systematically engineering my financial crisis for 18 months, and that she'd known about my biological connection to the Thorn family since before I was born. The reporters were silent now, listening. This morning, Elias continued, we learned that Lady Catherine has been arrested on federal charges including fraud, conspiracy to manipulate corporate succession, and blackmail. The evidence against her spans 30 years and includes orchestrated insurance fraud, shell company manipulation, and recorded confessions. A reporter shouted, "Did you know Lila was your sister when you married her?" "No," both Elias and Lila said simultaneously. "We discovered the connection 3 days ago through a family photograph. We immediately ordered DNA testing to confirm." "Are you seeking an annulment?" Elias and Lila exchanged a glance. This was the question they debated for 2 hours. "Yes," Elias said finally. "The marriage will be annulled. However, the corporate succession question is resolved. Lila, as Jonathan Thorn's biological daughter, is a legitimate Thorn heir. She now holds 49% of Thorn Industries. I hold 51%. The will's requirements are satisfied." "So this was all about money?" "This was about survival," Lila corrected, voice sharp. "My father is dying of cancer. I was facing bankruptcy. Elias was facing the destruction of his life's work. We made a business arrangement that seemed to benefit both parties. We didn't know we were being manipulated by someone with a 30-year grudge."
What's the nature of your relationship now? Elias fielded this one. Lila is my sister, my business partner, my family. He looked at her and his voice softened. She's someone I'm choosing to stand beside, despite circumstances neither of us wanted or expected. Are you in love with each other? The blunt question hung in the air. That's inappropriate, Marcus interjected from the side. But Lila leaned into the microphone. I think I was falling for the person I thought Elias was, a stranger who became a partner. Now I'm learning who he really is, my brother, my family. That's a different kind of love, equally important, just different. The honesty was devastating. Cameras captured every emotion flickering across her face. One more question, Marcus announced. What happens to Lady Catherine? That's for the FBI and federal prosecutors to determine, but the evidence is substantial. She won't be manipulating any more families. They stepped away from the podium. Flashbulbs exploded, questions shouted. But Elias and Lila walked out together, united, intact. In the car afterwards, Lila finally broke. I can't believe we just told the entire world we accidentally committed incest. Technically, we were victims of fraud. That's such a lawyer answer. But she was smiling, sort of. The kind of smile that preceded crying. Elias took her hand. You were perfect in there. I wasn't. I almost threw up 3 times. But you didn't. You stood there and faced them and told the truth. He squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you, if that's allowed. Brothers are allowed to be proud of sisters. Then I'm very proud of my sister. Lila's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face crumpled. What? Dad, he watched the press conference. Her voice broke. He wants to know why I didn't tell him. Robert Winters looked smaller than the last time Elias had seen him. The cancer had been eating away at him for months, but the last week had accelerated the decline. He sat in his hospital bed, oxygen tube in his nose, looking at Lila with eyes that held hurt and understanding in equal measure. Elias waited outside, giving them privacy. But Lila had asked him to come, had said she needed him there, so he stood ready. After 10 minutes, Lila opened the door. He wants to meet you. Are you sure that's... Please. Elias entered. Robert studied him with the kind of assessment fathers give to men involved with their daughters. Even now, even knowing the truth, the instinct was there. Mr. Winters. Elias extended his hand. I'm sorry for my father's choices, for the pain they caused. Don't apologize for things you didn't do. Robert's voice was firm despite his weakness. Your father made his choices. Isabel made hers. They loved each other, and they hurt each other, and they both moved on. He looked at Lila. And I got you, the best thing that ever happened to me. Lila was crying silently.
You lied to me, Robert continued gently. About this marriage, about why you did it. I was trying to protect you. I know. He squeezed her hand. But sweetheart, I'm dying. You don't have time to protect me anymore. The bluntness made Lila flinch. The experimental trial is working. You're in remission. For now. Maybe permanently, maybe not. Either way, I need to know you'll be okay when I'm gone. He looked at Elias. Will you take care of her? Dad, don't. Will you? Robert's voice was steel. Elias met his gaze steadily. Yes, as her brother, her partner, her family, yes, I'll take care of her. Even though this marriage was supposed to be temporary, business. It was never just business, Elias admitted. And now it's family. That's permanent. Robert studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Good. He turned to Lila. The press conference. That took courage. It was horrible. It was honest, and honesty matters more than comfort. He paused. I'm proud of you, both of you, for facing this nightmare with your heads up. We didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose to fight instead of hide, to tell the truth instead of maintain comfortable lies. Robert's breathing was getting labored. "That's the thorn in you, I think. That stubbornness. And the winters," Lila added. "You're pretty stubborn too." "True," he smiled, but it faded quickly. "There's something else. In my personal effects, there's a box. Letters from your mother, written to Jay but never sent. I found them after she died, kept them because they were part of her story." He looked at Elias. "Your father's story too. You should both read them, understand who they were when they loved each other." "Thank you," Elias said quietly. Robert's eyes were closing. The conversation had exhausted him, but he held on to Lila's hand. "Love you, sweetheart. Proud of you. So proud. Love you too, Dad." Outside the room, Lila broke down completely. Elias pulled her into his arms, let her cry into his chest, not caring that nurses were watching or that this looked complicated. She was his sister. She was grieving. Nothing else mattered. "He's dying. The experimental trial is working, but he's still dying." "I know. And when he's gone, I'll have no one." "You'll have me." Elias held her tighter. "You'll always have me." It was a promise, the kind you make to family, the kind that meant forever. They read Isabel's letters in Elias's penthouse, sitting side by side on the couch, a box of tissues between them. 23 letters written over the course of 3 months, 30 years ago. Love letters that were never sent. "My dearest Jay, I know I shouldn't write these. No, you'll never read them. But I need to speak to you somehow, even if it's just ink on paper that I'll hide away. Today you told me you love your wife, that you can't leave her, won't leave her. I understood. I've always understood. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. I'm pregnant. I haven't told you because what would be the point? You'd feel obligated, would try to help, would complicate everything when the situation is already impossible. I'm going back to America, back to Robert, who loves me patiently, who asks for nothing but my presence. It's not fair to him, I know, but I think I could build a life there, a good life, a real life. Not the dream we had here in Paris, but something solid, something that won't break my heart daily."
The letters continued. Isabel detailing her pregnancy, her decision to keep the baby, her return to Robert. Then, months later, after Lila was born. "She has your eyes, dark and intense, even as an infant. Robert hasn't noticed yet, but he will eventually. I'll tell him the truth if he asks, but I hope he doesn't ask. I named her Lila. It means night in Arabic. She was conceived in darkness, literal and metaphorical. But she's light, Jay. She's perfect, and I don't regret her for a second. I regret us, regret the impossibility, regret that you'll never know you have a daughter who looks at the world with your intensity. But I don't regret her." More letters, years passing, Isabel's love for Jonathan fading, but never quite disappearing, her gratitude to Robert growing into genuine affection, her life with Lila painted in small, precious moments. The final letter was dated 6 months before Isabel's death. "My dearest Jay, this will be the last letter I never send. Lila is 17 now, beautiful and brilliant and stubborn, all the best parts of you and none of the worst. Robert asked me yesterday if I ever regretted choosing him. I told him no, and it was true. Not because I stopped loving you, but because love isn't always about choosing the person you want most. Sometimes it's about choosing the person who can give you the life you need. You gave me passion and impossibility. Robert gave me stability and family. I chose stability. I chose family. I chose right."
but I never stopped loving you. We'll never stop. You're woven into every moment with our daughter. Every time she argues with professors about philosophy, every time she loses herself in art galleries, every time she looks at the world like it's a puzzle to solve, that's you. I hope you had a good life, Jay. I hope your wife made you happy. I hope you found peace with your choices. I did, eventually. Goodbye, my love. Thank you for Lila. Forever yours, Isabel. When they finished reading, both Elias and Lila were crying, silent tears that spoke of grief for people they'd never fully know. Parents who'd loved imperfectly, but completely. She never stopped loving him, Lila whispered, even after choosing Dad. He never knew about you, Elias replied. My father, he died never knowing he had a daughter. Do you think he would have wanted to know? Elias thought about his father. Jonathan Thorne had been distant, focused on business, sometimes cold. But he'd also taught him to ride a bike. He'd shown up to every school play, had cried at his mother's funeral. Yes, Elias said finally. I think he would have wanted to know, would have loved you, would have tried to be in your life, even if it complicated everything. Would your mother have forgiven him? Eventually, maybe. She was good at forgiveness, better than I am. You forgave me for the contract, for the desperation, for not asking enough questions. There's nothing to forgive. We were both victims. Still, Terita turned to face him. We're family now, by blood and by choice. That means something. It means everything. They sat in silence, processing. Then Lila laughed, soft and broken. What? I was just thinking. Catherine tried to destroy us by revealing we're siblings. Instead, she gave us family, real family, the kind that survives impossible circumstances. The kind that reads dead parents' love letters at midnight while crying over tissues. Exactly that kind. I'm glad I found you, even like this, even through all the horror. Elias rested his head against hers. Me too. Outside, the city glittered, indifferent to two people discovering they were family, indifferent to love that couldn't be, and love that already was, just in a different form than either had expected. We should probably annul the marriage, Lila said eventually. Probably. And figure out how to live as siblings instead of spouses. That too. It's going to be complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated.
Lila smiled against his shoulder. When did you become philosophical? About 3 hours ago, reading letters from our parents who loved each other impossibly. Fair enough. They stayed like that for a long time. Brother and sister, business partners. Two people who'd accidentally found family in the worst possible way and were choosing to keep it. 3 months later, the lawyer's office was tastefully neutral. Beige walls, leather chairs, paperwork that would legally erase their marriage. Elias and Lila sat side by side, pens in hand, ready to sign. This is strange, Lila said. Very. 3 months ago, we signed a contract to get married. Now we're signing a contract to unmake it. Our relationship seems to require a lot of paperwork. She laughed. The sound was easier now, less fraught. 3 months had given them space to adjust, to mourn what couldn't be, and build what could. The annulment papers were straightforward.
Marriage entered into under fraudulent circumstances. Parties were unaware of biological relationship that would have precluded marriage. Request for annulment granted. It's like we were never married, Lila said, reading. Legally, yes, but we were. For 3 weeks, we were married. Do you regret it? Elias considered. No. Do you? No. She picked up the pen. It gave us this: family, partnership, something real, even if it wasn't what we planned. They signed simultaneously, the same way they'd signed the marriage contract. The scratch of pens felt less final this time, more like transition than ending. There, the lawyer said, collecting the documents. You're no longer married. Congratulations? Thank you, Elias said dryly. Outside the office, Lila adjusted her coat against the autumn chill. Sunday dinner at Dad's? He's cooking, or attempting to cook. It'll probably be terrible. I'll bring wine. Expensive wine. We'll need it. They walked to Elias's car, falling into the comfortable rhythm they'd developed. Siblings who worked together, lived in the same building, different apartments now, had dinner with their shared father twice a week. It was normal, or as normal as their situation could be. Board meeting tomorrow, Lila reminded him. The Parker acquisition. I remember. What's your position? I think we should wait. Market's volatile. Better to secure our position before expanding. I agree. Elias pulled into traffic. See, we're already thinking alike. That's the Thorn DNA. Or we're just both brilliant. That too. At a red light, Elias glanced at her. Lila was reading something on her phone, face serious with concentration. She looked different than 3 months ago. Healthier, less burdened. The medical debt was gone, her father's treatment was working, and she just landed a prestigious position as head conservator at the Metropolitan Museum. She was thriving. And Elias realized, with something like wonder, that watching her thrive made him happier than any business victory ever had. What? Lila asked, catching him staring. Nothing, just thinking. About how I accidentally married my sister and it turned out to be the best mistake I ever made. She smiled. Same, though let's not phrase it that way in public. Probably wise. They drove in comfortable silence. Then Lila said quietly, I'm seeing someone. Elias's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Oh? His name's David. He's an art historian. Very smart, very kind, very aware of my complicated family situation. And he's okay with it? He thinks it's fascinating, actually. In a respectful way, not a weird way. She paused. I wanted to tell you before it gets serious. Make sure you're okay with it. Elias examined his reaction. 3 months ago, the thought of Lila with someone else would have gutted him. Now, it felt different, like watching a family member find happiness. I'm happy for you, he said, and meant it. You deserve someone who treats you well. He does. He's patient with the media attention, doesn't make jokes about the situation, just sees me, not the scandal. Then I like him already. You'll meet him Sunday, if that's okay. Of course it's okay, Elias smiled. I'm your brother. I get to intimidate your boyfriends. It's in the job description.
Please don't. Can I at least glare meaningfully? One meaningful glare, that's all you get. They pulled up to Lila's building. She gathered her bag, then hesitated. Elias, thank you for everything. For not making this weirder than it had to be. For becoming actual family instead of just DNA relatives. Thank you, he replied, for staying, for fighting, for choosing family even when it looked impossible. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. See you Sunday, brother. See you Sunday, sister. He watched her walk into her building, waving at the doorman who knew her now, disappearing into the elevator. His sister, his business partner, his family. Catherine had tried to destroy him by revealing Lila's existence.
Instead, she'd given him the one thing he'd always needed but never known he was missing: family that chose him back. The Thorn Industries annual shareholder meeting was standing room only. Elias and Lila stood together at the podium, presenting their vision for the company's future: expanded medical research divisions, ethical oversight committees, transparency initiatives. 18 months since the scandal, 18 months since the boardroom confrontation, 18 months since they'd become accidental siblings and chosen to make it permanent. The media eventually moved on to fresher scandals. Catherine was serving 15 years for fraud and conspiracy. Richard Cordova had quietly divested from Thorn Industries and moved his operations overseas. And Elias and Lila had rebuilt together. The old model of corporate leadership was isolation, one person at the top making unilateral decisions. But my sister and I have proven that partnership creates something stronger. Our father built this company on innovation, but he also kept secrets that caused decades of pain. We are committed to a different path, one of openness, collaboration, and family values that actually means something. The shareholders approved their initiatives unanimously. Afterward, in their father's old office, now shared, both their names on the door, Lila kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. I hate these meetings. You're amazing at them. Doesn't mean I enjoy them. She pulled out her phone, smiled at something. David's asking if we're still on for dinner. Of course. Elias had grown to genuinely like David. The man treated her well, made her laugh, and had handled the media scrutiny with grace. Tell him 7? Perfect. Lila typed quickly. Then, what about you? Any prospects on the dating front? I've been busy. That's not an answer. I'm considering it. There's someone, maybe. I don't know. Details, Lila demanded, sitting on his edge of the desk. Her name is Sarah. She's a doctor at Memorial. We met at a charity gala. She's brilliant and funny and has no idea who I am, which is refreshing. Have you asked her out? Not yet. Why not? Elias hesitated. Because every time I consider it, I remember Victoria, remember betrayal, remember trusting someone and having it destroy everything. Lila's expression softened. Sarah isn't Victoria. I know. And you deserve happiness, real happiness, not just the satisfaction of running a company well. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You're just finally listening. She hopped off the desk. Ask him out. Take the risk. You taught me that family was worth the risk. Maybe romance is too. Before Elias could respond, his phone rang. Marcus. Turn on the news, Channel 7. Elias grabbed the remote, switching on the television in his office. The news anchor's voice filled the room. This is breaking story about the Thorn family. Sources have come forward claiming Lady Catherine Ashford, currently serving a 15-year sentence for fraud, was not acting alone. Documents allegedly show involvement from several prominent board members who… Shit, Lila breathed. The story unfolded. More conspirators, deeper corruption. Catherine, even from prison, trying one last time to destroy them by implicating others in her schemes. Elias's phone started ringing. Board members, lawyers, media. He looked at Lila. Here we go again. Together? She asked. Always together. They dove into crisis management mode. Lila calling lawyers, Elias coordinating with PR, both of them working with the synchronicity they'd developed over 18 months of partnership. By midnight, they'd issued statements, arranged emergency board meetings, contained the immediate damage. They sat in Elias's office, exhausted, surrounded by empty coffee cups and legal documents. I'm so tired of this, Lila said. Me too. Catherine is in prison and she's still trying to ruin us. She'll fail. She always fails against us. Lila smiled tiredly. Because we're family. Because we're family, Elias agreed.
By midnight, they'd issued statements, arranged emergency board meetings, contained the immediate damage. They sat in Elias's office, exhausted, surrounded by empty coffee cups and legal documents. "I'm so tired of this," Lila said. "Me too. Catherine's in prison and she's still trying to ruin us. She'll fail. She always fails against us." Lila smiled tiredly. "Because we're family." "Because we're family," Elias agreed. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Saw the news. Are you okay? If you need to talk, I'm around." He showed Lila. "See? She's reaching out. She cares. Then text her back. Don't let Catherine's bitterness stop you from taking risks." Elias typed, "Thanks. Would you like to have dinner sometime? Somewhere without cameras, preferably." The response came quickly. "I'd love that. How about Tuesday?" He smiled. "Perfect." "Look at you," Lila teased. "Dating like a normal person." "Look at us," Elias corrected. "Building lives like normal people." "We're definitely not normal." "No, but we're family. That's better." They cleaned up the office, preparing to face whatever tomorrow brought. More scandals, probably. More battles. More people trying to use their past against them. But they'd survived the worst thing that could happen, discovering they'd accidentally married each other and turned it into strength. Everything else was just noise. In the elevator down, Lila leaned her head on Elias's shoulder. Dad would be proud. Robert Winters had passed away 6 months ago, peacefully, with both his children at his bedside. The experimental treatment had given him 18 extra months, 18 months to know Elias, to see Lila thrive, to understand that his daughter had found family in the most unexpected way. His last words had been to Elias, "Take care of my girl, you promised." And Elias had, would continue to, forever. "He would be proud of you," Elias replied, "of everything you've built." "Of us," Lila corrected. "We built this together." They walked out into the night, brother and sister, business partners, survivors of Catherine Ashford's 30-year revenge plot. The city stretched around them, lights and noise and endless possibility. "Want to grab late-night pizza? That terrible place on 47th that only we think is good?" God, yes. They walked through the city that witnessed their destruction and rebuilding, past tabloid stands that still occasionally ran stories about the Ice King and his secret sister, past Thorn Industries headquarters where they'd fought their battles, past all of it into something simpler, family dinner at midnight, terrible pizza, easy laughter. Catherine had tried to teach them that family was just another transaction, loyalty just another commodity. Instead, she'd accidentally proven that family was choosing someone every day, fighting for them, standing beside them when the world said run. Elias looked at Lila, his sister, his partner, his family by blood and by choice, and felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe, or just the recognition that he'd found what he needed in the place he least expected, not in romance or business victories or carefully constructed contracts, in family, messy, complicated, imperfect family, the kind worth fighting for, the kind worth keeping, the kind that turned a nightmare into the best thing that ever happened to him. "Hey," Lila said, nudging him. "Where'd you go?" "Nowhere. Right here. Exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Good." She linked her arm through his. "You're buying pizza. CEO perks." "I'm only CEO because you're COO, which means you get to buy pizza. It's in the bylaws." "That's not how bylaws work." "It is now."
They argued about it all the way to the pizza place, both knowing she'd win because she always did, both completely okay with it, because this was family, real family, and it was worth every impossible, complicated, beautiful moment.